In this lesson, I will show you how to create a toolpath using Mastercam. In the last lesson, we brought in a file and saved it as a piece of Mastercam geometry, so this is exactly where we'll start this lesson from. Here's our geometry right here. We have our outline of our piece of wood. We have our boundary that our image doesn't exceed into for safety. And the first thing we need to do to create a toolpath is we must pick the machine. So we have to go up to the menu up here and left click on machine type. And I'm just going to scroll down to router. And I'm going to left click on Larkin Cam tool. That's the one that I have in my classroom. You'll notice over in the operations manager some subgroup assemblies came in. We will then move up to the toolpath here. I'm just going to left click, and we're going to choose for this piece of material, we're going to choose engraving. And a window comes up asking us to name the NC file. It defaults with the name of your file already. That's fine. We can just accept that. And when I click that, a new window opens up, a chaining window. This lists all the different ways you can create toolpaths. And it defaults to the chain method, but probably an easier one in most cases would be the window. And that's one we're going to use. So I've just selected that over there. And all I'm going to do now is I want to put a window around everything I want to engrave or create a toolpath for. And I don't want to... There we go. Mastercam is asking us for a start point for that toolpath. It's not that critical. I normally pick somewhere in the middle. Everything turned yellow, so I know everything's selected, and I can left click on this. And when I do that, you'll notice a new window opens up, an engraving window, and we have some parameters we need to fill in here. The first one being the toolpath parameters. You can see it's empty. We need to tell it what type of tool to cut with. So we need to go down to the library down here at the bottom. I'm just going to left click. And when this window opens up for you the first time, it might look something like this, so you can't really see a lot of the information here. It's a good idea if you just use these slide bars to review more of the specifications of the tool, so you can see what you're going to select. We normally use for engraving a 1/4 inch 60-degree 5/1000 tip engraving bit, so that's the one I'm going to pick. And I'm going to click OK. You'll notice that it puts it up in the parameter window here. I'm just going to double click on it to open up further specs on this tool, and you have the flexibility within this program to change what it actually looks like, and I'm going to do this just for simulation purposes. You'll see in a second over here, right here, this is the simulation window, and this now represents the engraving bit that I have in my router, and it'll look like this when we verify it on the computer screen. I'm just going to left click to accept that. We're going to move over to engraving parameters. For the most part on this screen, the only parameter we will be using is the depth, and these other ones can be changed and will be changed in subsequent lessons and as your images get more complex. But until you really understand fully what they do and why you're changing them, I would recommend just leaving the default settings for these. So for the depth, this is how deep it's going to cut into the wood, and this can be kind of a trial and error issue, and it's great because we have a simulator. We can try it on the computer before we actually get to the machine and break or heat up a bit and burn something. So right now it's set to 5/100ths of an inch or 50,000ths of an inch, and for those of you more accustomed to metric, that's close to about 1.5 millimeters. 1.5, maybe 2 millimeters. I'm just going to leave it like that for now, and we'll see what it looks like. I don't think there's anything we change for this first cut. We're not going to change anything here. Nope. I'm just going to left click. OK. Now, if everything's done right, you should notice an extra line has come on your drawing here. And let me just see if I can show you in kind of a 3D view what you're looking at. Okay, so the purple line there is your geometry, and the blue line indicates how far the tool is going down, the depth of it. And if I zoom back out again, you'll also see some yellow lines. The yellow line indicates where the tool enters and exits the wood, so it has to kind of lift up and move over sometimes to get to another piece of the geometry. So this is good. Everything's excellent here. If for some reason yours, when you bring it in, has a whole bunch of red squares over it, that indicates that some of the paths or contours that make up the geometry are either overlapping or touching each other, and Mastercam does not like that very much. Let me show you an example. I'm going to go over here, File, I think I have an Oilers logo. Yeah, here we go. I've just quickly done a Oilers logo in Illustrator, converted it to a vector using Live Trace, and I just brought it in. I want to put a toolpath around it to show you what I'm talking about here. There. I got to pick a tool. And everything's okay. Okay, so you'll notice here I get some alert messages from Mastercam. Some of the base contours are overlapping. Error regenerating operation. And then an alert I can't even pronounce. So I know they're not good. And this is what I was talking about. If you zoom in, you can see little red crosshairs or plus signs, right? This can be fixed, but in most cases it needs to be fixed in Illustrator. This can happen for several reasons, one of which might be that duplicate layers may have been missed in Illustrator when you were removing them earlier. It can also be caused by the procedure used to convert it into a vector drawing, for example, Live Trace, right? So it can be fixed, but like I said, it's easier to fix in Illustrator than in Mastercam. So if this is what your image looks like when you create the toolpath, you need to go back to Illustrator. I'm going to move on, assuming that everyone has a good looking logo. And let me just move back here. I think it's that one. Okay, here we go. So we've looked at it, right? And that's a good representation of what it's going to look like, but you still can't really see any 3D kind of depth to it. Mastercam does have an excellent simulator. We just have to turn a couple of things on here. Follow me over here. I'm on the Properties tab. I'm just going to left click on this little plus sign, and I'm going to come down to the Stock Setup. So the Stock Setup window opens up. I need to set up my size of wood, and if you remember that from before, the Y value, the height value was 8, the X value across the bottom is 7, and we need to tell the computer that our origin is always the left corner, and our thickness of our wood is 1/2 inch. And we'll click on display here. If I click OK here, you'll notice on the screen here now we have an outline of our piece of wood. Our geometry is sitting on top. You can kind of see the outline. And now we're going to click on this icon here, or tool here. This is a verification, and it's a simulator. You see now my material is more of a solid piece, and I can zoom in or zoom out, and I can just play through and actually watch the tool cut out the toolpath. Now this isn't a very long program, but I'm just going to stop it here and fast forward it, because if you did have a more complicated, more in-depth toolpath, you want to fast forward it. You don't want to watch it. It just takes too long. And you can zoom in, and this is an exact replica of what it'll look like on the piece of wood. If there's an error here, there will be an error on the piece of wood. So this is a perfect example of you can fix stuff before you actually waste material and get it the way you want it to look. For example, if you wanted to experiment with how deep it goes or how deep the tool is going, it might change the look of your drawing or your image. Perfect place to do it here. All we would do here is come back to the parameters window, click up on engraving, and we'd change the depth here. And I'm just going to double this, right? It's 50 thou. I'm going to change it to 100 thou, or 0.1, and click OK. You'll notice now I have an X on my toolpath. It means I need to regenerate it, and I can come up here and regenerate the toolpath. And now if I go back to the verification icon and left click and just speed through it, you'll notice now the depth is deeper. It's twice as deep. It may look better, it may look worse. Depending on how close your lines are together, you could lose definition between parts of your drawing. So I mean, that's a personal preference. If you like it better, that's fine. That's something you can decide. If this is the way you want it though, and it's good, all you would do is left click this to accept it, and you would resave it. And when you resave it here, You've now resaved your toolpath, all your toolpath operations with your geometry. And that's it for this lesson.